Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Barefoot Conversations with Magdalene. How are you doing? How has your week been? How is everything? Today, my topic is understanding your mind, 3 keys to success. Understanding your mind, 3 keys to success. I want to take you on a journey today. I want to tell you a story, and then I'm going to tie everything in and give you those 3 keys that I believe will enable you to be successful. Imagine coming from a place of confidence, a place where you are encouraged to pursue after your talents, a place where you're encouraged to understand what it is you're passionate about and really follow it. A place that your self-esteem is so high that if anybody was to say anything negative to you, it would just be like pouring water off a duck's back because it doesn't affect you. A place, don't get me wrong, that you still do have those insecurities of one thing or the other, but generally your confidence level is quite high, that you're able to lead your peers without any form of hesitation, without having to think twice. Do I know it? Do I not know it? Will they listen to me? Will they laugh at me? None of that. You're able to stand and speak to your peers. And not only that, not only are you speaking to your peers are actually listening. There's one thing to speak to people. There's another thing for them to listen. But as you speak to them, they actually listen to you. Imagine coming from a place where everybody knows your name and celebrate you. A place that you feel almost like a local champion because everybody knows who you are. So you're wealthy, not necessarily in wealth, in money. You're wealthy because your community knows you. You are celebrated within your community, in the school and in your local church or your local gathering. Imagine coming from that place. How do you imagine that individual, that child, that adult would feel within themselves? If they were to tell you that that person had a low self-esteem, you would definitely doubt that. Because it doesn't show, this person doesn't exhibit it. They come across very confident. They come across as someone that knows exactly what it is they want to do. So now let's change that. You come from such a place of confidence. You come from such a place of high self-esteem. And then you go to another place. But this time round, nobody knows your name. Nobody celebrates you. Nobody even knows you exist. And those who know you exist mock at you. They laugh at you. They ridicule you and put you down. And you wonder to yourself, why? What have I done? Do I smell? If I smell, tell me so that I can at least go back and ensure I wash myself properly and make sure the clothes are very washed. Have I offended you in any way, shape, or form? Let me know. But don't treat me like someone that has a plague and then you keep away from me. Imagine what that individual would be feeling. Imagine what would be going through your own head if that happened to you. What would you be thinking of? I'm sure the first thing that will come into your mind is, I want to go back to where I'm coming from. I want to go back to where I was celebrated. I want to go back to where everybody knew my name. I want to go back to that place of confidence, because now that individual that has such a high confidence, had such a high self-esteem, slowly but surely, their confidence level have been knocked one at a time. What do you say to that person? How do you encourage that person when it seems that your voice encouraging that person is more silent than all the other people who are pulling that person down? That's not just a story, that's my story. That's what happened to me. Coming from my hometown, Nigeria, to the UK as a young child at the age of 10 years old. A young lady leading my peers in Sunday school. Being well known within the community. And as children, freely running up and down and just having the opportunity to just be as a child and to learn and without any form of restrictions. Being encouraged to follow after my passion, which is music, and to grow and thrive with that, to gain my voice. Coming from that, where everybody spoke the same way I spoke and nobody stood out. And even if you did, we wanted to hear from you. We wanted to understand how you speak so that maybe we could copy you, not to laugh at you and reproach you. But I came from that and I came to the UK. And you can imagine such a massive culture shock. For one, the weather was very different. And I came to the UK and I started school. And now all of a sudden, from being the main person that everybody celebrated, to be the person that everybody ran away from. Nobody wanted to be identified with me. Nobody wanted to be next to me, all because of what? Accent. I spoke English, but I sounded different. Can you imagine that? We're speaking the same language, we're both speaking English, but I just speak with an accent while you speak. But then I could turn it around and say, but you have an accent, because your accent is different to mine. But we're both communicating and we both understand what each other is saying. But your accent is different to mine. But as a child, you don't think like that. As a child, you want to be accepted. As a child, you want to feel involved. You want your peers to acknowledge you. So your mindset doesn't go there. So coming from a confident young lady to the UK, and I begin to get laughed at, all because of my accent. What do you imagine happened to my confidence? On a day-to-day basis, it's just like someone taking one brick after the other, one brick after the other, and they began to level that house. And that's what was happening. My confidence level was going up. My mindset was that of, why am I in this country? Why have you done this to me? Do you hate me so much? Take me back to where I'm coming from. I don't want to be in this country. But that was over 20 years ago. And here I am still in this country. But the mind is a very fragile thing. The mind is a very fragile thing. And what happens to the mind at one point in life can determine the path an individual takes, either in a positive way or in a negative way. And if we're not careful and handle the situation with care, you could lose that person, that father, that mother, that brother, that sister, that son, that daughter, that husband or wife, boyfriend or girlfriend, whomever. You could lose them. You could lose them because they could so retract back into their mind and their mental state be so fragmented that they become a shell of themselves. You could lose them in a sense that they just feel that they're not worth living anymore. And they decide to end it all because they feel that when they are no longer in existence, it's better for everybody. My topic says, understanding the mind, 3 keys to success. I've already said it. The mind is very fragile. If we do not learn how to understand our own mind, how do you understand someone else's mind? When we go through life, we go through so many things. There's so many things that happens to us that impacts us, either in a positive way or in a negative way. An innocent child who is brought into this world by parents who should be the number one people to protect and preserve the innocence of that child are the same people who are molesting that child, either sexually, verbally, or in any way, whatever way. It's a molestation in one way or the other. Abusing that child in one way or the other and taking away that innocence, taking that child away from his or her rightful place in life. Then after going through all that child now has to go through some form of therapy. They may not go through it as a child when they're still there in their young age. It impacts them in such a negative way, and it then begin to have a boomerang effect because as they grow up, because that's all they've known. They begin to inflict pain on somebody else. Because all they've known all their lives is pain and hatred. How can they give what they don't have? It's not possible. The mind is so fragile that we must be careful. When two people get into a relationship on the basis of love, then love turns to hatred because abuse comes into play. Either physical abuse or mental abuse. If it's physical abuse, obviously you get the beatings and all the rest of it on the body. But what happens to the mind that is not seen? What happens to the mind that is not seen when a person is being physically abused? What happens to the mind? What about the mental abuse? Those things that are said to that person. When they tell the person, you're too fat, you're too ugly, nobody will ever be with you. You're worthless, you're useless. You're a fool, and on and on and on. The list goes on. What happens to the mind? The bruises on the body you can see. But what happens to the mind when you can't see? What happens to that individual? That individual becomes a shell of themselves. Walking around as a zombie, as a living dead. They're alive quite okay, but emotionally, they're dead. How do you work with such an individual? How do you bring that person back? There's one thing to bring that person back to a place, and then you begin to work with them from that place to get them to a place of strength. Understanding the mind, it's so important. It just takes a little thing to trigger somebody. One little thing. And you can imagine the years that person might have endured abuse, molestation of some sort or the other, in one way or the other. Being bullied, in my case, because of my accent. Coming from a confident young 10-year-old child, 10-year-old child, leading my peers from as way back as 7 years old, to becoming a shell of myself. Working with youth through my organization, Music Relief Foundation, I have seen so many and heard so many stories of young people. And you wonder, how is it possible? Because all they've known is abuse. All they've known is neglect. All they've known is isolation. Social media is the order of the day. But social media doesn't bring people together. You are connected, okay, on the online world, but what about on the physical level? When bullying no longer stops in the classroom, it now continues online. So you can no longer escape it. It begins to haunt you everywhere you turn. And your so-called friends all turn against you, all because they don't want to be singled out and being mocked out. Kids can be so fickle. Understanding the mind, understanding the fact that the mind is such a precious thing and it should be preserved. It should be kept in such a way and nurtured like a newborn baby that you hold in your hand and you dare not drop that baby. That's how the mind should be kept and preserved. Because when somebody else who has been damaged comes into the life of someone else who hasn't been damaged, but that person has some form of influence over the other person, what happens to that person? Just imagine what happens to the other individual if he or she is not strong enough to withhold and withstand the negativity that is coming from the other person. What happens to them? Barefoot Conversations is about unearthing those things that we kind of shy away from. When we look at relationships, is it just enough to say, I love you, I love you, I love you? There's more to that. Love is the starting point, but love is not the end of it all. When you look at a relationship, for a relationship to work, it takes a lot of hard work. But then how is it meant to survive? How does it grow and thrive when one person, in a sense, is doing the work and the other person is doing the direct opposite? You look at relationship between partners, a loving relationship, well, a so-called loving relationship, either in a marriage or as partners, boyfriend and girlfriend. You look at relationship between parents and children. You look at relationship between siblings. You look at relationship between neighbors. You look at relationships, whatever way you want to class the relationship. When one person has a negative attitude towards that relationship, how does it impact the relationship? When you look at business relationships, and one business partner is ready to take the risk and go ahead, and he or she sees potential in so many things, and the other one is so cautious and like, no, let's not do this, let's not do that. And so as such, it begins to slow things down, it begins to frustrate the other partner. And it could be vice versa. How are things going to work out in the long term? You look at children who come into the world, who come into this world, who never asked to be born. But you as a parent decided, you know what, I want to have this child, and you bring the child into the world. And then from the very onset, the child begins to experience abuse. You hear the news of the babies, or like the baby Peters and all the others who suffered needlessly at the hands of those who were supposed to care for them. And you wonder, what happened? What happened to you? How could you do this to such a defenseless human being? How could you do this? The mind is so fragile. The mind is so fragile, and it all stems from the foundation. We need to go back and understand what happened. Why should a child mock at another child all because of his or her accent? I wasn't mocked at by adults, I was mocked at by children. But then you may say, oh, they are innocent. No, they're not innocent. They can't be innocent because you're inflicting misery on somebody else. So that I don't class that as innocence. I class that as evil. So I put the blame on the parents, because parents should be able to teach their children to be accepting of everybody. You may not agree with whatever it is they may be doing, but be accepting. Don't mock at them, don't laugh at them, because you don't know the impact. As a result of that bullying in primary school and the desire to want to fit in, as I moved on to secondary school, I chose to have another identity. So unconsciously, because I never sat down and said, this is what's going to happen. So unconsciously, I found myself as a teenage mom. There are consequences to what we think are harmless jokes. Nothing is a harmless joke, because it has a boomerang effect, and it affects people in several ways. For a woman to be pregnant, that's one thing you're already dealing with, what the hormonal changes, everything that's happening around you. And then for a young girl to be pregnant, when you don't even understand what is happening to you, you're dealing with all the changes that's taking place in your body. And now all of a sudden you have another human being growing up within you. And on top of that, you're dealing with what your community, your family, society are ushering to you, all because of this child in your belly. That's too much for one person. It impacts the mind in such a detrimental manner. And for that person to be able to come out of that and get to a place, and they're able to look at a person and smile and say, you know what, it's been a journey and I'm still on that journey, but I'm okay. And not only that, you're able to speak and inspire. That's the main thing, to inspire other people, especially other young people, to be able to turn their lives around. That is a powerful thing, but it doesn't happen overnight. So my 3 keys to success are, the first one, faith. I keep saying it. As a Christian, I have faith in God. I have to have faith in God because I've come to understand when I put my faith in man, in human beings, when I mean man, I mean both male and female, I've been let down, I've been disappointed so many times. But when I put my faith in God, He has never let me down. I may not get the answer I want at that time, but He has never let me down. That's the first thing. Second thing, being dedicated. I talked about my passion being music. I've been dedicated to that all my life. So as I grow up, and as the days turn into weeks, and the weeks turn into months, and the months turn into years, I have seen how music has evolved in my life. So how it was 10 years ago is not how it is right now. But does that mean I've deserted my passion? I can't, because my passion is me, and me, I'm the passion. So we are one, we cannot be divided. We are intertwined. Music and I, we are intertwined. But I've seen how music has evolved as I grow up. But one thing I can say, I have been dedicated to the cause. And it has enabled me in my growth, both personally and in a business manner. Dedication is key. So even when everything else outside looked as if there was no hope and everything was crumbling down and it felt like there was fire on the mountain, one thing has been consistent: music. It has come into my life in several ways, and it has enabled me to smile and to breathe and encourage me to continue to hold on and to continue to have faith. That was my first point, I said. And my third point is network. You need to network with like-minded people. You can't do this alone. No man is an island. No man is an island. You have to network with the right kind of people. Iron sharpens iron. When you network with the wrong people, you go back to where you started from. But when you network with the right people, you may not take everything that they are doing on board, but you take some elements of what they are doing and make it your own, that you're able to grow and thrive and succeed and excel. You need to be able to stand and become your own person, not trying to become somebody else. I am Magdalene. I do not have a twin. There may be somebody out there who looks like me, who may sound like me, but they can never be me. There may be people out there who want to copy and emulate, but they can never be me. I feel sorry for those ones. Why? Because they haven't found their voice yet. And that's what I'm saying to us today. Until you understand your mind, how do you become successful? You need to understand your mind. And how do you understand your mind? You need to go back to your journey. Understand your journey. Understand where you're coming from. It's so important. Sometimes we run away from those bitter and hurtful times because we've closed it up. We've stored away all the skeletons in the cupboards and we don't want to go back there. But you know, sometimes, not all the time, you do it once and just get it over and done with. You need to go back. Go back and dust off all those dusts that are clogging away at those books that you've written, those diary notes that you've taken all those years ago. Those cupboards, those cabinets that you've locked away and you've kept the key somewhere that you will never go back to. You need to go back there. Because until you can deal with the root cause, you can't advance to anywhere else. So I'm going to conclude again with my 3 keys to success. Faith. Mine is having faith in God. Yours could be having faith in whomever, I don't know. Have faith. Be dedicated. Be dedicated to your passion. no matter how long it takes. Be dedicated, and also you could also say be committed to it. Obviously, when you're dedicated, you're committed. Keep at it. People will laugh at you. They will ridicule you and say to you, are you still there? Are you still doing that? It doesn't matter how long. Think of Colonel Sanders. He tried, and even at the late hour of his life, I would say the late hours, in his 80s, that's when the recipe for KFC was birthed. Now the world, he's no longer with us, but his family, his estate is enjoying from that. The world knows KFC. When you go past any KFC shop today, it's always crowded. It's always crowded. Be dedicated. And the last thing, network. Your net worth is your network. Or your network is your network, whichever way you want to put it. With the right people. With the right people. Don't go over there with a selfish attitude and say, how can I get what I want? I get you nowhere. But how can I support somebody else? Who do I need to connect with to help out? Because by so doing, by helping other people, guess what? You are also helping yourself. You may not even think of it. You are also helping yourself because you find that you're growing. And those things that used to bother you, they no longer bother you anymore. You are growing. You are thriving. You are learning new skills. You're imbibing a leadership skill. You're having transferable skills that you're able to impact and inspire and encourage and motivate other people to do great things. So have faith, be dedicated, and network with the right people. This is Magdalene Adenike presenting Barefoot Conversations. I just want to give you a quick notice here that Barefoot Conversations will now come on a fortnightly basis, no longer weekly basis, but on a fortnightly basis. So until next time, you have a great week. Think of what I've said. Play this video again. Share this video with your friends and be encouraged. Bye for now.